Okay,
Did you ask for 7?
yes, for 10.
Oh, really?
Go.
Okay.
So there's a mobile. So it's got flat feet.
Okay, so today, hopefully you guys are here for listening presentation because Russ had needs analysis on the schedule. And then it got changed to listening presentation because he's in California. So I changed this week, 2 days ago. Because the first one that came out on Monday was wrong.
Yeah.
But I really like teaching. Here, let's get the mic right here. You want credit for this. Okay, so I really like the listening presentation because there is a lot of skills that we're going to talk about that if you incorporate into your practice, you're going to get better at all areas of this business. It's really going to help you grow. Is that right? Okay, so it can really help you grow. So I talk a lot about the need for practicing your skills moving forward. And I'm going to give you some things today that you can break this down and use that part of your daily practice to get better at what you're doing. Okay, so what we're going to do for the outline today, the first hour, and I don't think I'm going to keep you guys here for the whole 2 hours. Just don't tell Russ. He's not on, right? Okay.
It's a board.
I'm not going to keep you that whole time. But if you have questions, I'm going to stay that long. Okay. So the first part of this, I'm going to give you the whole outline. Okay. We go through the Century 21 listing presentation, and I'm going to give you the whole outline. We're just going to breeze through that. Then the last half, I'm going to hand you this worksheet that's got questions on them, and we're going to go through that together. So by the end of the presentation today, you should come away with your own version of what this listing presentation is. Okay, and you can incorporate this into the buyer's presentation, but this one's specifically for the listing presentation. So we're going to focus on that, but there's 3 things. There's setting the appointment. There is the presentation. And then there's the close. Okay, 3 steps into this process. You've got to set the appointment, you've got to present to the client, and then you have to close them and actually get the contract signed. Does that make sense? So let's take a poll really quick. Which one do you think is the most important? Okay, so how many said setting an appointment? 1, 2, 3, 4.
No.
4. Okay, so there's 4 of you that said setting an appointment. Who says presentation? Okay, 1, 2. Okay, and who says the close is most important? Okay, 1, 2. Okay, let's see if anybody online said anything. Other than their names? No. Okay. So here's my thought. And it's not necessarily that one is better than the other, but I'm going to give you a reason why I personally believe that this is one of the most important parts of the process. Okay, it's not that this is just my own belief. So you can stick with your guess if you'd like, but listen to this for a second and see what you think. When you have something to say to somebody, is it easier or harder to set an appointment with them?
Easier.
Easier. Why is it easier?
I'm just enthused about it. I know I just know what I want
Mhm.
and how to share with them. And so to ask them to get together is very easy.
Yeah. So have you guys ever, I hope you guys are all making your SOI calls, but have you ever just called somebody without really knowing why to call them versus having a really specific purpose on why I'm calling them? How the difference is how you feel?
Yeah.
It's a little bit easier when you know what to say, right?
Right.
Okay. So I look at it as this is one of the challenges as a new agent is when we don't really have a presentation down or we don't have the confidence in our presentation, that apprehension leads into our setting appointments.
They want you to provide value too.
They want you to provide value, right? Okay, so if I don't have that, setting the appointment becomes really difficult. But let's say that I get really good at setting the appointment, the script. Then I get to the point of they say yes. And then what happens when they say yes and I don't know what to say?
The presentation doesn't go well.
Presentation doesn't go well, right? Because you get nervous, we start winging it, we start just talking, it just doesn't have a direction for it. So I look at this presentation as if you have a really solid presentation that you are really confident with, you know what you want to say, you want to know when to say it, and it leads you through the whole process. This is going to become easier for you. Okay, so remember, I didn't say these, which ones should we replace them? They're all important for this process. We have to have all of them, but the presentation will lead to an easier setting an appointment because you'll be more excited about it. In fact, when I work with a lot of new agents, I find that when they're not setting appointments, it's not because they don't have the skill to set the appointments. They're just nervous that if they set the appointments, then they have the oh crap moment. Like, now what do I do? Right? And so they don't set an appointment, and that like backfires on them. Or they set the appointment, and my favorite is instead of pre-qualifying them to make sure it's not wasting your time, you're trying to disqualify them so you don't have to go out there. Like, why should I not go visit this person? Oh, well, they've got this other thing going on. And then we disqualify them, and we're like, okay, good. But we don't actually say that because we really want the appointment. But subconsciously, we're like, okay, I feel much better now, right? Okay, so then we have the presentation and then the close. Obviously, without a close, you're not going to have a transaction. But I find that when you have an actual set presentation with actual closings, a way to close, like specifically asking somebody to do something. In the presentation, I hear more people doing, let me know what you think. How do you feel about this? That kind of a close versus let's get started. Sign the paperwork. Those strong closes. When you have a really great presentation that's leading to that close, the close becomes really easy for you. You know what to say and you go right straight in the close. When you are all over the place with the listing presentation, what happens is there's never a comfortable moment to say, well, now that we've talked all day long, let's sign the paperwork, right? And so you're uncomfortable. And if you're uncomfortable, what do you think they feel like?
Uncomfortable too.
They feel uncomfortable too. Okay, so we want to make sure that we have that presentation down. So any of them are right. I just wanted to bring that up, that so many agents will not really develop this presentation so that it's really part of them. Why do you think most agents don't like to have a set presentation? What would you say?
I don't think it's that they don't like to have it. It's that a lot of them are unaware of what to do or how to do it.
Okay, so maybe just not even having the presentation
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Put in the work.
They want to put in the work of creating the presentation. Okay, I like that. What else?
Sometimes I feel like I don't want to seem too formal, like I want it to be more casual, like friends talking.
Yeah. Okay, so we're creating this atmosphere of like, hey, let's be friends first, and then when we're friends, we'll work together, right?
I think based on tenure, some people that feel like they've been around forever don't feel like they need it. And then new people that don't have one don't know what to put in it, or what order to put it in, or whatever.
Yeah, so different spectrums. So really, you bring up a really good point. So as a new agent, we might not know what to say, but as an experienced agent, the problem is we know how to do it. So instead of having a presentation, we kind of just come off as, well, I'm just going to talk my way through this. Okay. I've dealt with this before. I've sat down with the listing presentation before, and I'm just going to give my presentation. I've been on hundreds of listing presentations, and the number of times that I've actually gone through my listing presentation all the way through versus just me winging it. There's a lot of times I wing it. And I found that when I actually do the presentation, I have a lot less trouble through the whole process.
Well, I was saying what you just said at the end, that
Mhm.
if you or anybody we get, probably the outcome wouldn't be as good, right?
Possibly, if you're really good at winging it, that's what's confusing a lot of agents, that they don't create this. If you can sit down with a client and you can have a conversation about buying a home, you feel really confident about that. Okay, I know Michael, you've done it. I know Chris, you've done it. Okay, you guys are really like if I gave you a buyer and I said, hey, these guys are interested in buying a home, and you were gonna sit down and talk to them, do you know what to say to them? Okay, so you're comfortable with that, and that's the same thing with listing presentation. I know what I'm going to do. The problem is if we don't have a structure in place, then we just get in there and we wing it. And typically what happens when we're what I call winging it, we talk our way through our thoughts. And that means our presentation is longer. It means that there's more chance for error in the communication process. If you ever communicated with somebody and they heard something totally different than you thought?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, the reason for that is because we gone around a way that makes us understand, and they didn't hear it the way we said it. And that's why it's so important to create this listing presentation that has a very strict outline for it, so that no matter who you're talking to, you can talk directly to them about this is what we do. Okay, I'm not saying that every single situation you're going to have to go through the formal listing presentation. I was talking with an agent the other day, and an SOI called them up, and they were a past client, and they had bought the home with them. And the next day, and I said, let's just try to do the presentation. And they had such a good relationship that as she started the presentation, the client said, yeah, I don't really care. Just where's this thing? Let me sign it.
I've had
Okay.
clients try and get the contract out of my hands and be like, I'm just ready to sign it, I don't care.
Okay, so there's times where sitting down and doing a formal presentation is not in their best interest. But I find that we gravitate to not doing a presentation more than we gravitate to doing the presentation. And what I want to do is, as we go through this, I want to get it to the point where you have the presentation, and at any point you can go into the presentation if you need to, but you're also will understand that. Make sense?
A question to you, the one that just wanted to sign probably was a repeat client, somebody that knows you well, right?
It was a SOI, but it was my first time helping them. But yeah, I tried to go over my listing presentation and everything too, and they're like, we don't care, just give us the paper and sign it.
My guess is it was an SOI, and they probably had a connection with somebody you'd worked with before, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the most powerful type of presentation we have. When somebody we know talks to them and says they are great. That's the best presentation we can have. If you have that opportunity, you have someone else tell the client that you're great, and then you don't have any problem. But if you don't have that client telling them, then you've either got to go through the presentation, or you're going to have to just hope that they see the value you bring. Make sense? Okay, so every presentation needs to have 6 things. So I just call this like my keys to a great presentation. Okay, this is my listing presentation right here. Okay, you can see that it's got writing all over it. It's all beat up. This is, I should have wrote a date when I actually did this, but it's probably been 10 years that I've used this presentation. Up in this top left corner, I have these 6 things. Okay, the reason I have these 6 things, because as we go through them, it doesn't matter what presentation you're giving. If you have these 6 things in the presentation, it's going to be a successful presentation. I take these things and I will review them before I actually go into the meeting. So I'll sit in my car and I'll go, okay, these are the things I need to make sure I accomplish today. Then I go do the presentation, and I come out and I sit in my car. Before I leave, I'll look at those things and I'll say, where did I do good? Where did I do not? Where should I have done better? And I can usually narrow it down to, this is why they signed, this is why they haven't signed. Okay. And when we go through these, I want you to think about your experience where they want to think about it. Think of where we might not have hit it 100%. So they have to think about it, because thinking about it isn't a problem. It's just part of this process. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one is rapport and connection. Okay, everyone that you work with at some level has to feel comfortable with what you are saying and who you are. They have to have this connection. Okay, connection, I say it leads to comfort. We all search for comfort in our lives, and comfort will allow you to lead. If you don't feel comfortable with who I am and I say, let's go do something, what's the chances you're going to follow me and do it? Yeah, it's not going to happen, right? Because you don't feel comfortable, especially if you don't know the outcome. If you don't know where we're, like if I say, hey, we're going to go in the kitchen, we're going to have some lunch, and you can smell the lunch, you might just trust the lunch, you can smell the food, and you're not really following me, you're following the smell. But if I say, hey, let's go down, I got a bus outside, let's go outside, and you don't have any thought of who I am and what I present, the chances of you getting on that bus are pretty slim, right? Okay, so we have to have a rapport and connection. Rapport, what is rapport?
Mutual respect.
Mutual respect. Okay, tell me a little bit more about that.
If we don't have an open dialogue and you are not willing to talk to me, then we haven't established any kind of rapport.
Okay.
But once we've broken through that barrier, then rapport has started to become established. And then the trust and connection comes after. It comes with it.
It comes with it. Okay, so there's rapport, there's connecting. Tony Robbins calls it it's a connection. It doesn't necessarily mean you have things in common with each other, but it doesn't mean that we're focusing strictly on things that are common. So let me ask you a question. Who's been out of the country before? Okay, a lot of you. You need to travel more. Let's put that on your, let's put that on your goal list. Okay. When you've been out of the country, have you ever run into somebody from the United States, maybe even Utah?
Yes.
Okay. How do you fit? What did you see and how did you know that they were from there?
University of Utah sweatshirt.
Okay, University of Utah sweatshirt. Okay, where were you at?
I was in Belize.
Okay, you were in Belize, you saw a University of Utah sweatshirt. What did you feel instantly when you saw them?
Just a connection because we had something in common.
Okay, you had something in common, you had a connection. Did you feel comfortable with talking to them?
Sure.
Okay, so that's the start of what rapport is. Okay, you finding something you have in common.
Yesterday, I went to an agent's office because I wanted to ask some questions. And we were talking about prospecting and things like that. And then he says, who do you feel more comfortable with? If you go to a Hispanic store talking to people or to me? And I said, well, I feel more comfortable in the Hispanic store talking to people. He says, how so? I see you every day. And I think, yeah, but we haven't never really speak. I just saw you and you see me. And I said, and he says, so he was surprised that I will feel more comfortable talking to strangers that are Hispanic than talking to him.
Right, because you have this connection and you have this personal belief that you've grown up with it, that makes you feel comfortable, right? Okay, so you feel comfortable, so you're allowing somebody to lead with that comfort. Rapport is just the start. We're going to go in and out of rapport with every conversation we have. The challenge is unless you stay in rapport through the close, they will never follow you. And if you can't get this connection where they feel comfortable with what you are, they're putting up a resistance, you will never be able to close them. So if you get to the point where you feel uncomfortable, you don't feel like that they're really listening to you, the chances of them saying yes to a close is very slim. It's the same with when we set appointments on the phone. You want to connect with them, then you want to close. You want to connect with them, then you want to close. When they say no, what automatically happens? You're prospecting. I say, let's get together on Wednesday at 5. Does that work for you? Nope, I don't want to do that. What instantly happened?
You feel rejected.
Okay, you feel rejected. Yeah, you might feel rejected. Okay, but
The connection.
a rejection isn't necessarily a problem. It's just we have to work through it. So we break the rapport. We broke the rapport. So if I go directly back into the close and I try to close them again, what's the chances that I'm going to get a yes? Very low, right? Okay, so I actually have to go back and ask more questions and get back into rapport. Now, the challenge is if we only rely on the commonalities, so the University of Utah sweatshirt over here, okay? If we only rely on the commonalities, that quickly, it gives you the doorway in, but it does not give you the right for them to lead you. So let me give you an example. This University of Utah sweater guy, okay, that you see him in Belize. You look across the thing, you see him, you're like, hey, there's somebody from my house. I want to go talk to him. You walk over there and instantly he's like, oh, I don't have a clue what Utah is. I'm not even from the US. I just found this shirt. What just happened?
The connection's gone.
The connection's gone. The commonality's gone. Now it's all of a sudden, now it's just a stranger that he's meeting, but that commonality is gone. If I'm in my presentation and I connect with something we have in common and I stay on that, I'm going to lose them through the process. I'll give you an example of that. We were in the process of wanting to get a dog. This was a number of years ago. Okay, so I really like boxers. I wanted a boxer, and I went on this listing presentation, and they had 2 boxers, and I thought, this is great. I love boxers. They love boxers. I love boxers. We have a connection. And for 45 minutes, we talked about their boxer and how we could get them their home sold, and you know what they thought about their dogs and stuff like that. Then they said no, and then I left, and then they signed with somebody else, and I realized that my connection with them, my commonality with them, was not making them want to follow me. It was just, we just had a great conversation about dogs. That was it. And it wasn't until after that that I realized that just because I have something in common with them doesn't mean I have full rapport. Any questions about rapport?
Yes.
Okay.
So if I understand you right, you are saying that to keep on that rapport alive and establishing the connection, there has to be something in there that needs to be done, like good questions or something in there that is going to put those 2 things together.
Exactly. That's what it is. So what do most people like to talk about?
Themselves.
Themselves. And if it's not themselves, who's next on their list?
Their kids,
Their kids. Okay. And if it's not them, it's not their kids, what's next?
they're not.
Their dog. And if it's not their dog, then what's
Good
next?
job.
Their job. Okay. What's the common thing that we're getting here? Them. Them. That's the common thing.
But now it's
So
not
we're
that.
now we're gonna ask questions, and we're gonna build rapport around them.
So now I'm confused. You were in the steps, you were talking about the dog, but then it didn't work.
It didn't work because I was talking about the dog for me. I was talking about me. I was interested in it. Well, what were they interested in?
I see.
So,
Knowing their needs.
Okay, they're selling the home. Here's the thing. If I talked about the dog at the first, would I have connected with them?
You opened the door.
I opened the door, but then I kept talking about the dog through the process. That's where I messed up.
So
If
you-
I would have just connected and opened the door and then been like, great, we love your dogs. I want to buy a dog just like that. Let's talk about your house. Let's talk about what you're trying to do. Let's talk about that.
You stayed in the doorway and then you closed the door. Yeah.
Stayed in the doorway and they shut the door in front of me. Look, we all make mistakes. Every time, when I stand up here and I teach you about these things, it's because I did the opposite too. And sometimes that's why I have this on the top of my listing presentation, because I still have to review it to figure out, okay, where was I? So when you look at your yesterday's appointment for you, we'll use yours because I don't know if anybody else went on an appointment yesterday. Did anyone else go on a listing presentation? So you get to be the winner. Okay. Did you feel like you connected with them?
Yes, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I feel like we did a good job of keep rapport, like kept talking different things, but yeah,
Perfect. Okay, so that's step 1. Now we're on step 2. Step 2 is what Chris, you said earlier, you've got to bring some kind of value. If you don't bring value, they're going to work with you. Okay, what would be some value that I bring?
Expertise.
Expertise. What else? Knowledge, expertise, resources.
Knowing the market, well, that would be the expert.
Okay, anything else?
Ability to offer
Marketing,
referrals to like other team players, technical.
Okay, referrals, your connections, who you are, what you represent. Okay, that's all value that I bring. In our presentation, there's 2 kinds of value. Okay, one value is value that, what do I call it? Just like marketing value that people can buy. So there's bought value. And then there's learned value. Okay. If I say that you should list with me because I have access to the MLS, is that bought value or learned value?
Bought.
Okay, so everybody here has access to the same thing that I have, right? They have the same thing. You can pay the same amount of money that I pay and have the same access to the MLS. How about a key box? My key box is pretty cool. I can put it on the door and agents have to open it up and then it texts me that they open it up. That set me apart from you guys?
No,
No?
no.
Because you guys have that same key box, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Did you buy that key box?
After my presentation, I'll do it.
Okay, so that's bought stuff, things that's bought. We have a tendency to get stuck on our bought side. Okay, I'm gonna tell people, these are the things that I can provide for you. I'm gonna put it on the websites. I'm gonna put a sign in your yard. I'm going to put a key box on your house. I'm gonna do all of those things under the bought category. What would be the learned category?
I've sold.
Where to put the key box?
That could be very important. Some agents might put it somewhere dumb. Communication,
Your resume.
leadership. Your resume. Okay. Those are things that have to be learned. This is in the category of value that I want to bring. I want to make sure that I'm bringing value. So let me ask you a question. Okay, Aubrey?
Yes.
Actually, I think I've done this with you before. So what's your name?
Urbano.
Urbano?
Urbano.
Urbano?
Yeah.
Okay, Urbano, if I have a $50 bill, will you trade me for a $20 bill?
No.
No, you wouldn't? If I have a 50 and I'm gonna give you 50,
Oh,
if you
yeah.
give me 20,
Yeah.
would you do it?
I'd do it, yeah,
Okay, how often would you do it?
every time.
Every time? So if I just kept giving you 50s, you keep giving me 20s,
Yeah.
okay? It's the same thing in the presentation. I'm going to give you value. And if you are giving me more value back than I'm giving you, what's the chances you're gonna do it? So let me flip this around. I got a $20 bill. I want to trade you for your 50. How often would you do it?
0 times.
0 times.
Yeah.
Not even once, just because you felt bad for me?
Maybe, but no.
Okay, some listings feel bad for you and they'll give it to you once. But the reality is you won't do it very often, right?
There's no value.
So if I don't establish value in my presentation, nobody is going to want to either listen to me or they will for sure not follow me. They won't list with me. So I've got to create that value. I've got to create $50 value that I'm giving to them for their $20 value they're giving back to me. My 7% commission is that $20 when I'm giving them the $50. And when they see that, it's not a question about should I pay you? It's a matter of we need to work together because I'm going to make you more money. Starts with your own belief that you're going to make them more money though. If you personally believe that this is the only thing that separates you, your bot category, you're gonna spend a lot of money and it's not gonna work. Any questions on value? Okay, number 3.
Really quick,
Uh-huh.
so, I did a question about value, I guess, as far as, when you're newer, especially when you have, not very much experience. How do you communicate that you can't offer them value even though you are newer?
Okay, so it sounds like what you're saying specifically towards the value of expertise,
Yeah,
okay? Because there's different values. I
Yeah.
mean, can you communicate?
yes, I can.
Have you ever been a leader in something?
Yes,
Could you follow a process?
yes,
Okay, could you make phone calls?
definitely.
Okay, could you coordinate and solve problems?
Yeah.
Okay, those are all valued, right? Okay, but if you're specifically talking about, hey, I'm a new agent, but I haven't sold 50 homes yet. What value do I have? Then we turn that to. If I haven't sold the homes. Could I still sell your home? Could I?
Yeah.
Why?
If I have those values,
What would you do if somebody asked you a question
Uh-huh.
and you didn't know the answer? What would you do?
I'd find out.
And where would you go?
I'd go to me personally, I'm
Uh-huh.
you or
Okay.
whoever, you know?
You go to me, you go to Rick, you go to Ruby, you go to anybody in the company, right?
Yeah.
So value for you is the company,
Yeah.
the company, the resource, okay? We want to get out of this mindset of new versus experience, okay? In real estate, it's not about new and experienced. It's because, do you know an experienced agent who doesn't make any money?
Yep.
Okay, do you know a new agent who makes a lot of money?
Yep.
So if it's about new and experienced, those would be opposite, right? It's about a passive agent and an active agent. Okay? A brand new agent with a lot of energy and a lot of drive to go get something done and they'll figure it out is more successful than an older agent, experienced, not older in age, but longer in the business, who's passive and not willing to go out and find business. They're going to do more business. So the key isn't I'm new versus I'm old. It's I'm passive versus I'm an active agent. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And the key is to be an active agent. So look at your schedule, Luz, and see if you're an active agent or a passive agent.
Yeah, hey, a question for you.
Uh-huh.
One of the listings I had, the first question when we sat down was,
Okay.
what are you going to do to market next?
Okay.
That was the question number one.
Okay. And we'll talk about that.
How are you going to do that?
So we're going to talk about that in a little bit, because the reality is if we don't know how to do it, we need to learn how to do it. Okay. What am I going to do? Because in any presentation, what does the seller want? They want to know at least three things. What are they most interested in having you over there for?
How much you can get for their house.
Okay. How much you can get for your house? What's the next question?
How are you going to do it?
How much is it going to cost me? And what's the third one?
How fast?
And how fast can you get it done? That's what the seller wants. They want to know that answer, those three answers. Do I want to give them those three answers right away? Why?
A lot of the things you can't guarantee.
Well, I can't guarantee, but I haven't established value yet for them to see working with me equals their answers.
They got what they want out of you right away and there's no further need for you.
Right. Yeah. So if they don't believe that I'm the right person for the job, does it really matter what I say to them moving forward? No, not really at all. Right. So our job in this listing presentation is to establish that they want, that we have the value that they need. And then we'll give them their answers. Okay. The number three is we want to separate themselves from the competition. Who's the competition?
Everybody in this room.
Everybody in this room. We're all competition. We're all going for different listings. Okay. Now, if we were all the exact same, what are the deciding factors between whether they go with Melissa or Luz? What's the deciding factor? You speak English too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just saying that everything's the same. You're both in the company, you both have access to the same things, you both spend the same amount of money on advertising. If there's nothing different between you two, what would they decide on?
Commission report.
Commission?
We'll look at that.
Mhm.
So,
Okay, so what you're gonna charge. So if Melissa charges 7% and Luz charges 4%, and they're the exact same, who will we go with? The 4. Because why would I pay more for the same service? Right? Now, what's the other one? So commission, and there's one other thing that will be the deciding factor on who they choose if there's no difference. How they feel. Okay, let's say they both feel really good. I feel really great about both of these agents. What would be another thing that would decide?
Who brings the most value?
Okay,
They're the same, basically.
they're the same.
Yeah.
Okay,
Who's promising the higher price?
promising the higher price. So if Luz comes in and says, I'm gonna sell your home for $850,000. Melissa says it's not gonna sell for more than $775
$750.
or $750 or
$50.
600, right? They're gonna go with Luz because they're the same. So they're gonna say, okay, they're the same. So those are the two factors that we're looking at, that if we don't separate ourselves, they are going to separate for us based on those two things.
Well, this past listing that he retired from the market, through all the price reductions we went through, I said to him finally, I said, you know what, when I came here, I wanted to go get rid of your home for $650. He says, if you would have said that to me, I wouldn't choose you.
He wouldn't have chose you. And the reason for that is because there wasn't enough value in what you were presenting to help them understand where the market was. So they're gonna use all of these things to really decide who they're gonna pick, okay? So separating from the competition. If I go into my presentation and my list of things are MLS, sign in the yard, 800 websites, national brand, and that's it, I don't separate myself very good. And then we wonder why they pick the other agent based off of commission or based off of price. Okay, that's the challenge that we have to do. So if you look at it and you say, okay, am I competing? And if I'm competing, then I have to make sure I do this. Make sense? And I'll give you some ways we can do that as we move through it, but we're just going through the outline real quick. Any questions on separating? Okay, number 4 is trust. I also like to write the word capable. Okay, they have to believe that you're capable of getting the job done. Okay, this actually builds into 2 fundamental beliefs that we've got to have in real estate. One is, I believe that I'm the best person for the job. Okay, I believe I'm the best. Okay, and the number 2 is, I believe I can sell the home. This is in yourself. This is for you personally. If you don't believe you are the best person for the job, somebody else is going to get that job. If you don't believe that you know how to sell the home and you actually know how to sell the home after you get it, somebody else is going to get the job. These are 2 beliefs you have to have of yourself. Regardless of whether Chris goes on the presentation and I go on the same presentation, Chris has to believe that he is better for the job than me, regardless of my skill level. He has to believe that. And we get in this mindset of, I'm competing against a top agent. And then we get nervous and then we kind of feel inferior to that top agent. The reality is, as an agent, we know who the top agents are, but as the public, they have no idea who the top agent is. They have no clue. Okay, so if I'm competing against Chris and he sells a lot of properties and that's how we're competing, I don't have to worry about them knowing him more than me in this process, because I just have to convince them that I believe I can sell the home better than he can. And that's my own personal belief. And if I'm more confident in that and I show that in my presentation, if I show that confidence more than he can show that confidence, I'm going to win, regardless of how many homes he sold versus how many homes I've sold. As a brand new agent with a lot of energy, a lot of activity in your life that you're doing, that you can help them, you're going to show them that you're the best person for the job. Doesn't matter if they sell a lot of homes. Make sense? So they have to believe it, but you have to believe it. If you don't believe yourself, they won't believe you either. Kind of goes hand in hand. Okay, next is number 5 is safe or reduce risk. In every transaction, there is a certain amount of risk involved. If I work with somebody and they take advantage of me, I could get in trouble. That's what the public thinks in their mind. Okay, I don't want to work with you because if you give me bad advice and I do the bad advice, I'm going to get in trouble, right? Does that make sense? So for sell by owner, what do you think their risk is? What is one of their main risks with working with an agent?
Losing money.
Losing money. They don't want to lose money. If I hire you to sell my home, it's going to cost me money and I'm going to lose money. That risk is way too high. I'm not going to do that. Right? So it's this belief in their own mind that it's too risky. So your appointment, they're thinking about the commission, right? Okay. There's a chance it could be one of these 3. I doubt that I'm pretty sure you probably gave the trust and that you're capable, but there could be a separation issue, or they could be a reduce the risk. It could be a risk issue. I don't want to pay you that much commission because, well, that's my money and I don't want to pay you. Okay, well, it's safer to work with me and pay that money than it is to work with somebody else. So let me ask you a question. You get wrongly accused of a crime that's going to put you in prison for a very long time. Would you represent yourself so you could save the money? Or would you hire one of the best attorneys out there to defend you so that you don't get put in jail? What would you choose?
I've already called it.
What's that?
The best.
The best.
I already called it.
You already called, okay? Why would we do that?
I don't wanna risk going to jail.
The risk is really high for me representing myself in this process. Especially if it's like, maybe the risk isn't bad if I'm going to a small claims court, and if I lose, then I lose, $500 and I'm gonna fight that. But if it's a big deal, the risk is too high.
Yeah, typically you don't know what you're doing, so you can look, anybody can look up anything, you can look up any law virtually.
Yep.
But it's like, how practiced are you in that? So.
Exactly. Okay, and being on the compliance side, I see all your guys' mistakes. And I know the problem that can create. Okay, we have an agent who a little while ago got served with a notice from an attorney for something that they did in a transaction. $750,000 lawsuit for a problem that they did. Okay. There is risks involved with working with an agent. No, Chris, it wasn't you.
That's good.
If it was him, he would have known about it.
He would know about it. Yes, he would. I'm just teasing. But that's the same thing with our sellers. Okay, our sellers, they have a risk that's there, and if we can establish that working with me is safer than not working with me, then that's important. What if they don't realize there's risks? What can I do?
Educated.
I can educate them on the risks. Okay, is there ways a seller could get themselves in trouble in a transaction? Okay, if they represented themselves as for sale by owner, could they get themselves in trouble that would cost them way more than 6%?
Disclosure issues.
Okay, disclosure issues, perfect. Let's say there's a disclosure issue and they go to court. You know how much an average, just the beginning of a lawsuit costs?
No.
Take a guess.
27,000.
27,000. That's more than 6%. Right? That's just acknowledging that you have an issue. If you actually have to go to court, then you really have to decide if it makes sense. So when you guys come to us and you say, hey, this person didn't pay the commission and it's going to be, we're going to fight it, and it's like $1,500, and Rob looks at you and goes, you really want to do that? And if we win, that's great, but if you lose, it's a lot more than $1,500. Does that make sense? So that's what I do. I want to reduce the risk, and I want them to feel safe.
So for sale by owner, there is a person that is either very confident or very ignorant. Is that safe to say that?
Well, I think that's maybe too general.
A lot of them
Case-
don't see the value in realtors.
Yeah, I mean, the public says, I mean, what is those billboards been saying as you drive I-15 down to Utah County for the last 4 or 5 years? What do they?
Somebody steal your equity.
Yeah, don't let somebody steal your equity, or put your hard-earned money in your pocket. What is that teaching the public?
Distrust and reduce value
Uh-huh.
or
So it might not be that they are naive to it. It just might be that's how they're educated on it.
Especially coming from the market we had last year where anybody could sell a home. And
Mhm.
everybody was fighting for a home. It was easy for people to sell by it themselves.
Yeah, having conversations with sellers right now about, hey, I think we got to drop your price by $150,000 just so you know, to get your home sold, is not a fun conversation if their mindset is, well, last year They were putting offers in over ask price, no contingencies, no appraisals, none of that stuff. That was a crazy time we were in. Like, in the risk management side of that, we opened ourselves up as an industry for some crazy stuff that happened. And we'll probably see some of that come down the pipeline in the next year or so because of some of the crazy stuff people did. Based off of, let's win the thing, but you gotta do what the market was doing, and so all of us as agents did that. Well, now the market's changed, okay?
That's a way you can provide value to them now,
Mhm.
being able to have those conversations and knowing how to handle those situations.
Yeah, and you understanding those situations so you can explain it to them, and then all of a sudden, see, making you feel safe. I might need to make you feel uncomfortable and not safe for a second, so that I can show you that I'm the solution to feeling safe.
You can show them how you can make them safe.
Yeah. Okay, so I have this conversation. I used to do search and rescue up in the mountains here, and I used to go up and rescue people that were stuck on cliffs. Okay, I might need to educate them on the stupidity that they were doing. And that working with me and hooking into me is a safe route. Before they actually do that. Because what they did got them in trouble. So I might make them feel uncomfortable. In order for me to make them comfortable with me as a solution. Make sense? Okay, then the last is a close. Okay, we want to make sure there's a close. The close is not, well, tell me what you think, or we've had a lot to say. Reach back out to me. Okay, we laugh at that, but we do that all the time. We're like, yeah, what do you think? Oh, we want to think about it. Okay, you know what? And then your mind, you're thinking, yeah, I want to think about it too. You know, especially if you're analytical and you're like, yeah, I mean, look at all the stuff that I presented. That I have to think about this. So we have to make sure we have an actual close.
By doing that, you lose leadership.
Yeah.
And then you say, here, you take over now.
Yep. Yeah, we've had a great presentation. What do you want to do? Yep. No, that was it. I remember Jessica Terry, when she first started in the business, for the first 4 or 5 years, she was coaching with George, and George was asking her, well, so what is your close? And she'd be like, well, my close is, well, why don't you think about it and let me know what you think, and we'll see if we can get it going. And then the next day she'd try to get the listing. She's like, why am I losing all the time? Because she never actually closed. So I'm going to teach you some actual closes that is like, okay, sign the contract. It's not, how do you feel about this? You know, you have any questions about this? That's not a close. That's like, I'm going to tee the ball up, and then I'm about ready to swing. And then I'm like, that sounds great. Right? Put it ready. I'm ready to hit it. And then I never hit it. That's what the close is. Make sense?
A mental hurdle that I have is this idea of it's their home, it's your home. I can't tell you what to do. You know, so I think in that regard, that's where I find myself kind of like, well, here's some stats or here's some stuff, like read it over and let me know what you want to do because it's your home. Like, I don't want to tread on that ownership, I guess is a way
Yeah.
to say that.
So we tee it up and we just watch it. Right?
Yeah.
That's what it is. Okay, and that's the challenge with it, is we have to be more confident in ourselves to say, now I've done it. Now let's hit the ball and see what happens. They say no. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Good thing.
That's a good thing. Why is it a good thing?
It's just open for more questions, unanswered questions.
More questions and
There.
everything. What you don't want is for them to say, I don't have any questions. And you go, well, let's sign the paperwork. No, I'm not going to sign the paperwork. Well, what do you feel about it? No, I feel great. I think you're a great agent. I think, you know, everything's great, but I'm not signing it.
They have life.
That's the problem. When they say, no, I have a problem with what you said, that just leaves us open for a conversation, gives us back into presentation, and we can talk about those.
Well, then you have to go back to which one of those steps didn't you get? Did I not give it enough value? Do they not trust me? Or they don't feel safe?
Yeah, and when they say no, we instantly break rapport. So we instantly have to go back and build rapport. And then once we build rapport again, we can ask questions in this regard on what they are. Okay, so now I'm going to give you the outline. Okay, we're going to go through this outline really quick. And then we're going to build it from there. Okay, in every presentation, there is 6 steps. I guess 6 is the magic number thing. Okay, so number 1 we call it TAP. Okay, it's think, acknowledge, and a promise. Okay, when you go on a presentation, are you nervous even a little bit?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Do you think the seller is nervous to have you over as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a little bit of fear that's built in, regardless of whether we know them or not. There's this uncomfortable, uneasy feeling that we have. Well, we're taught that gratitude and fear can't coexist. Okay. Gratitude does not equal fear. When you're fearful, you don't go into a place of gratitude, but if you can force your place into a place of gratitude, the fear will go away. Okay, I'm going to go back to an example about when I'm on the mountain rescuing somebody. Okay, we're on the mountain, we're rescuing a younger individual who was on a cliff, and I needed them to go down the cliff. We were not going up the cliff. We were not climbing with them. They were going down the cliff. They were terrified. They would not move. That does not work well when we're still on the cliff. We have to move our feet. Okay, she wouldn't move her feet. She was totally just scared out of her mind. Now, the reality is we weren't in a situation where she would fall. We were hooked into ropes because I hooked her in and we were safe. There was nothing that was going to go, but she was in her mind. She was not safe. She would not move. She was paralyzed. When I went to a place of gratitude and I changed her thinking and I asked her questions, I said, so where do you go to school? You know, how many brothers and sisters do you have? You know, what do you like to do for fun? First, she was resistant because she was still terrified, but then she started answering my questions. As soon as she started answering my questions, I took her away from this fear, brought her into some gratitude, and she moved her feet. And that's all I needed her. I just needed her to move her feet a little bit, and then we would start moving down the hill. And that's what we did. The same thing goes with us. When we have a little bit of fear and we go to a place of gratitude, we're going to start feeling more comfortable in the process. The seller is the same thing. You got a stranger who's coming into your house. They're driving up. Trust me, they're looking through the blinds, seeing what kind of car you're driving, seeing what you do. So if you need to do weird things, do it before you get to in front of the house, because I guarantee they're going to be looking out the window at you. Then you walk in the house and I go straight to this tap. I thank them. That's my gratitude. I acknowledge what they've done, or I not acknowledge the situation we're in. And then I give them a promise. I tell them what that I'm going to help them through this process. I give them some reassurance. So I thank them. I'd say, hey, Aubrey, thanks for having me over tonight. I know your time is valuable, and I promise you I'm not going to waste your time today. Super simple, right to the point. I'm just thanking them. I'm acknowledging something, acknowledge their time, acknowledge that they've got a great house, acknowledge that, you know, they could have met with any other agent out there, but they're meeting with me. And then promise them that you're going to do something, that it's not going to be a waste. It's not going to be something they're not happy with. Make sense? Okay. Now, I do this. This is my trigger to get into my presentation. If you've been on a presentation, does the seller get you off the presentation very often?
Sure.
Okay.
Just about all the time.
Just about all the time. In fact, they love to get you off the presentation, especially if they're an expressive. They will express themselves out of the presentation, right? Okay. This I use to get in the presentation. So I'm going to give you the way that I go into a presentation. I'll get out of the car. I'll walk up to the door. They'll answer the door. I'll thank, acknowledge, and promise them something at the door. Okay. Hey, thanks again for having me over. I'm excited to see your home. I know you guys have got a lot of agents you could meet with. Promise you this won't be a waste of your time. Then I go in and I look at the home. I like to look at the home. I usually go with the client. You can go with the client or you cannot go with the client. That's a personal preference. I like to go with the client. I know if I go with the client, it's going to take me twice as long. So the way that I do it is I'm going to walk through the house like a buyer would walk through the house. If there's anything I'm not picking up, point it out to me and let them follow. I never let them lead me through the house. If they lead me through the house, my presentation is now 2 hours. If I lead them through the house, I can control the speed. Like, who really cares that there's a closet here? I'll open the closet. It's the same as any other closet I've ever seen. I shut the closet, but they think it's very important.
I always. Every listing presentation I've ever been on, I let them show me the house,
Mhm.
because in my head, I think it lets me build rapport with them, get to know them more, and. Have them just feel more comfortable with me.
Yeah.
I really like that you make them follow you through the house. And then they can still point out stuff to you, still build rapport, but you come across as a leader more.
And that's where I've transitioned, because there was a lot of time that people were teaching, go to the kitchen table, read my material. I'm gonna walk through the house really quick and I'm gonna see your stuff. And I think that for me personally, I mean, you can do that. Like, there's not a problem with that. I mean, you set that up right. You can whiz through that house super quick and get back to the table. But what Chris, you're bringing up there, that's what I found my best time to build the rapport and find out about what they wanted was during that time. So I just took that, but I need to lead them. Is the way I
you
look
just
at it.
took something that already works pretty good. And then just made it even better, because then they see you as the leader.
Perfect. Okay. All right, number 2 is what I call the game plan. Okay, I'm gonna say this, it's 3 statements. And it's not gonna make a lot of sense unless you really hear what I'm saying. Okay. So this is my entire presentation. First thing is, I'm going to tell them what I will tell them. Then I will tell them. And then I will tell them what I told them. Did we follow that?
No.
Okay, first thing I'm gonna do is Chris, I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna tell you. Then I'm gonna tell you it. And then I'm gonna tell you what I told you.
Oh, okay.
You got it? Still not following it? Okay, so I'm gonna give you an outline. This is what I'm gonna say. Then I'm gonna actually say it. And then I'm gonna repeat it.
Okay,
Make sense?
yes.
So repeat it 3 times, basically, is that what you're saying?
Well, I'll show you how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna tell them what I'm gonna tell them. So in this particular case, this is me telling them what I'm going to tell them. This is not a discussion. We're not having a discussion now. We're just gonna tell you what is going to happen. So I'm gonna say, there is 4 things we're gonna accomplish today in our presentation. 1, we're gonna talk about your needs and wants. Next, we're gonna talk about your expectations, market. Number 3, we're going to talk about the market pricing. I put my CMA in here. And number 4, we're going to sign paperwork. Okay, so I'm going to tell you right now, all we're doing is going to tell you that this is what I'm going to do. So Chris, I'll give you the example. Okay, so I just thanked and I promised you something. And now I'm going to say, Chris, this is what we're going to cover tonight. This is what I like to call my game plan. First, we're going to talk about your needs and your wants. Next, we're going to talk about your expectations and my expectations about how we're going to get your home sold. I'll talk to you about my action plan, get your home sold. Then we'll talk about the market and the price, see if we can get you the best price for your home. And last, if you feel 100% confident that we can get the job done, I'm going to ask you to sign the paperwork so we can begin the process.
You set that expectation ahead of time too, they might not be as nervous and waiting for it to drop.
Perfect. Did he say anything while I went through that line?
No.
No. Okay. Do you think he has questions about the presentation?
Yes.
Yeah, because I haven't given it yet. But I don't want him, this is not the time for him to give me his thoughts. I'm telling you what we're talking about today. This is what we're going to talk about. I'm giving you an outline of what we're going to talk about. Okay, that's me telling you what I'm going to tell you.
And if they start saying anything during that time, you can say, we're gonna cover that.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's a good question. We're gonna
exactly.
cover that.
Okay.
And just
Now,
the plan.
could there be questions they have that don't fall into any of these 4 categories? Okay, so I always ask one other question right here. I said, is there anything else? Okay, I say, is there anything else that you want to make sure I cover tonight in our presentation. Okay, now let's say they have a list. They say, yeah, I want to talk about your commissions. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull out my paper. I'm going to go, okay, commission. We'll definitely talk about that. What else would you like to talk about tonight? Okay, and then you say, we want to talk about, you know, some specific marketing stuff you had. Okay, perfect. Specific marketing. Great, we'll cover that. What else do you have? Because I don't want them talking in this process. This is where we get off the presentation. Remember, we talked about the listing, the sellers take you off the presentation over and over. This is me taking charge. I'm going to thank, acknowledge, promise. Then I'm going to give them an outline. This is what we're covering today, Aubrey. This is the direction I'm going. You good with it?
Yeah.
And as soon as they say, yep, now I'm in my presentation. Make sense? Any questions about that? Okay, so Chris, I just told you what I'm going to tell you, but did I tell you any of it?
No.
No, I just gave you that list. Okay, number 3 is I'm going to ask questions. Okay, Lou, you brought this up. We got to ask questions. There's 2 types of questions. There's factual questions and there's emotional questions. What's a factual question?
House and market.
House and market. Okay, anything about the house, anything about the market. It's got a fact. It's got something specific there, right? Make sense? Okay, what's an emotional question?
I'm scared my house won't sell in the time frame.
Yeah, what happens if my house doesn't sell in the time frame, right? Okay, so I've got 2 different types of questions. The challenge is you can never connect and close somebody on a factual question. They're not going to allow you to close them on a factual question. You have, how many bedrooms do you have? How many bedrooms in your house?
10.
You have 10 bedrooms. Great. Let's sign the contract. Does that work? Not really. Okay. But when we switch those factual questions into emotional questions and we start talking about their emotions, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about, you know, what I've shared with you? Now I can close because there's emotion built into it. Make sense? Okay. Now the questions, what questions am I going to ask? I've just told them what I'm going to tell them. Now, what is my first step?
Tell
I'm going to tell them. So what am I going to start with?
their needs and wants.
Their needs and wants. So I'm going to ask questions in regards to needs and wants. After I figure out what their needs and wants are, now what am I going to do?
So do you think you can sell my house
Expectations.
in a month?
I'm going to ask questions about their expectations. I'm going to ask questions about the market for them. I'm going to help them discover it. Then I'm going to ask questions about the market. Then I'm going to ask questions about pricing and my CMA. I'm asking questions. I'm leading them through the process. Okay. Number 4 is where I insert my plan of action. Okay. And I do this in the middle of my expectations. Because when they give me their expectations, do I have, as an agent, do you have expectations for a seller?
Yes.
What's your expectation?
House
Clean
be
the place
clean
up.
and available.
Clean and available. What else?
They will want to work.
Okay. Okay, so you want to see if they want to work?
Wanna
What?
Talk about seller disclosures then? Couldn't, no?
Good. Well, you could talk about seller disclosures. I don't know if I would bring it up there, but when I have specific expectations, I want certain things to happen. Okay, in order for me to sell your home, Aubrey, there's things I need to make sure happen. My expectation is that you're going to have the home clean, ready to show. That when somebody asks to see your home, if it's reasonable, meaning not in 5 minutes, but it's reasonable within the next 30 minutes to an hour, that you'll be willing to go and show the home or let the home be shown. Okay, that's my expectation. Okay, if we don't establish those expectations, then you're like, you just denied the last 4 showings. How am I supposed to sell your home? Like, how are you supposed to sell your home if the seller never lets somebody in? I want my expectations. Do they have expectations of me? I hope so. And if they do, I want to know what those are. This is the fastest way to create a problem in a relationship is to not know what their expectations are and not meet them. You set an expectation for me and I don't meet it. How are you going to feel?
Well, if I set an expectation for you,
You set an expectation for me and I don't meet that expectation. How do you feel about me?
I don't trust you anymore.
You don't trust me anymore.
Disappointed.
Okay, here's the problem. Most sellers don't tell us what they expect from us, but in their head, they've got expectations. Okay,
Is there never one expectation going to be the price? I wanted to sell for this much and I'm not taking any less.
could be. I don't think that's
Can we
always
talk
this.
about that then.
I don't think that, I would talk about that in their pricing, figuring out what they are, but their expectations, what expectations are. I want to know how I'm going to communicate with you. Do you expect me to call you every single time I show the home? Or can I call you once a week and tell you what's going on in the market? Okay. I want them to understand that when a buyer shows their home, they may or may not give me feedback. Because feedback from a buyer is just a common courtesy. It's not a requirement. We like them to give us feedback. But if they decide not to buy their home, did they give us feedback? They did, because there's something that they didn't like that made them not buy the home, right? So we have to look at that.
And a lot of times the seller wants to know, I mean, obviously they didn't buy the home, but they want to know the reason why not.
And if they give it to you, that's great. But the reality is if let's go back to the market that was really busy and you were showing your buyer hundreds of homes all the time. Okay, and I just showed them 6 homes and they said, I don't want to buy any of them. Okay, and then you're like, great, I just wasted 2 hours of my day. So you're frustrated. And then the agent calls up and says, hey, I just saw you showed my home today. What did your buyers think? And you're in your mind, you're saying, well, they said no. So what do? What do you create for that agent?
Well, really, in that case, you are saying,
Like start asking questions maybe.
No, so I'm talking about a listing agent just called me. I'm a buyer's agent. I'm not, my buyer's not buying their home. Am I going to give them really valuable feedback about their listing? Would I?
If there was something that was discussed that would be worthwhile to bring up.
Okay. Okay, so if there is something specific out there, but if you've shown a lot of homes, most agents, oh yeah, they didn't like the
Blinds.
line. They didn't like the way that my favorite is, it was too big for them. Or it's too small for them. Like what that tells me, if an agent tells me it was too small for them, it means they don't really know what their client said. They just said it's too small for them.
well, then I got lucky because,
Yeah,
in the-
no, some agents, and I hope you are that kind of agent that gives good feedback because it's really helpful. But I just want I want you to set these expectations that just because somebody gives you feedback doesn't necessarily mean that's really what it is. Because really, when it comes down to it, there's an issue with the price. Because the right price, it doesn't matter what the property looks like. For the right price, you would buy it. Right? If I have a $500,000 home that I'm going to sell and they offer it to me for 100,000, what happens?
I buy it quick.
Yeah, Justin buys it himself. Right? That's the thing, is at a certain price, everyone buys it. Now we move into market. I like to go global. Then to national. Then local. And then I talk about the CMA. Okay, why would I talk about the global market or national market? I put those kind of in the same, like I touch on these really carefully, like really quick, but why would I even talk about the national and global market?
Separates you from the competition.
Okay, it separates me from the competition. Okay, why else would I talk about it?
you want them to have a clear idea when you tackle the CMA, where are you coming from?
Okay, so let me ask you another question. Does the global and national market have any bearing on the Salt Lake City, Cottonwood Heights neighborhood?
Well, not exactly that way, but if there is a downtrend, not exactly, you're not pinpointing, but the market is not going high globally right now,
Okay,
no matter where you are.
okay, so Michael, why don't you explain why you said no?
Because demand for Cottonwood Heights is remarkably different than demand for rural Arkansas.
Okay, very different. Okay, so why would I even touch on this? If that's the case, okay,
Yeah, well-
so they're so different. If what's happening in Arkansas and what happened in Cottonwood Heights, they're so different. Why would I even care to touch on these two things? Why would I just skip to, hey, the local market and the
I'm
CMA?
not only gonna bring buyers from our local area, and I understand what's going on outside of our area, that I can bring other people in that may.
Okay, so that might be how you're separating yourself.
Right.
You're gonna bring people, you want to understand that? What were you gonna say?
I think you kind of answered it. I'm just going, I mean, globally and nationally, interest rates are rising.
Mhm.
Globally and nationally, there's a housing shortage. Globally, and nationally, people aren't buying.
Mhm.
But yeah, that is different than the local, but I mean, I think it sets yourself apart as far as being able, them trusting you to, hey, he knows what's going on. So why not touch on the global and national?
Okay, I like that. Okay, so those are some good reasons. So let me ask you this question. When somebody who's not in real estate, they don't have access to the MLS, they don't have access to anything like that, where do they get their information from? Okay, the news. And is the news your local Cottonwood Heights news?
Sometimes.
Okay, if you're watching the
Just
specific
media.
one, but where is the news? On the TV. Yeah, I watch the TV, I'm sitting in the gym and they've got CNN and they got Fox fighting against each other for your time, right? What are they talking about?
They're talking about market of real estate.
Which direction? They're talking about the global and the national market. Okay, so the perception of the clients, this is what they're seeing. So if this is the same, I have no problem. If this is different, then when I get to my CMA, they're not going to believe me. So I touch on this really quickly. I say, hey, the global market's doing this, national market's doing this. Let's talk about your local market. Because I don't know whether they've been watching TV. I don't know where they're getting their news, but I can tell you that if they believe that, so I've worked with people in Texas and I've worked with people in Salt Lake. Is Texas's market the same as Salt Lake's market? Has anyone ever worked with a Texas buyer that's come into Utah? Okay, what is their mindset when they come to Utah?
Should be a lot cheaper.
Should be a lot cheaper, right? Boy, what I could have got in Texas to what I can get here, there's night and day difference in prices, right? Okay, so if I don't touch on what that is, then when I lead into my local market and the CMA, I'm never gonna have anything. Okay, and then the last one is we want to do some closes. Okay, I'm gonna teach you two closes. I call one my no close and the other one I call the fill close. I want to make sure we have a fill and a no close. Okay, so here's the fill close. There's three questions with it. Number one, how do you feel about what I've shared with you? How do you feel about what I shared with you? Is that a close? No. No, it's leading me into a close. Okay, how do you feel about what I shared with you? How do you feel about the marketing and strategy that I presented to you? Okay, and then the last one, how do you feel about us getting started tonight? Now, is that the close?
Yes.
That's the direct close, right? Okay, so how do you feel about what I've shared with you? How do you feel about the market and the pricing that we've talked about? How do you feel about getting started today? Okay. If you don't like the word fill, you can say think. But I call it a fill close. Okay. The no close. This is one I like the most. Okay, what I would say for the no close, three questions as well. Okay, one is there anything else you'd expect from Century 21 to get your home sold? What answer do I want to hear?
No,
No. What if they say yes?
then you ask what is. Then
And I go back into my presentation. I am not ready to close yet. But they say no. Then I go to my second question. I say, is there anything else you'd expect from me as your agent to get your home sold? Now, if they say yes, I'm going to go back into questions because I want to know what they expect. But I'm expecting them to say no. Okay, and then the last question, is there any reason we can't begin the process tonight? Okay, so it's no, 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 sign the papers. Make sense? So that's what I like, the no close, but the bill close is fine too. Whatever way you want to go.
You see, whether you do yourself or the company first, second on that.
I don't think it really matters which one you're doing. I mean, basically, you're in a cadence of getting 3 no's. You're getting them in the process of moving through it. I want to know if they have expectations from me. I want to know if they have expectations from the company. Obviously, those have to go before the last one.
Right.
But yeah, I don't see any issues with switching those up if you'd rather bring you up first. Okay, so what I'm handing out is a little worksheet. So we're gonna just spend the next 15 minutes on this, and then we'll get out of here. Unless you guys have more questions. But on the presentation, any question that you have on that? Any part of it? You got your keys to the presentation and the outline of the presentation. Any questions?
Are you closing us right now?
What's that?
I said, are you closing us right now?
Is there anything else you'd expect from my presentation today, Justin?
Mhm.
No, great. Let's fill out this paperwork and go home. Okay, perfect. So, okay, so here's a listing appointment sheet. So if you look at it, it just goes through the same thing that we talked about. Thank, acknowledge, promise. So I want somebody to think of how they would say that and just go through it really quickly for us. Let's give an example. Somebody who wants to do the tap for us. Okay,
Stand up for a meeting here.
sure.
So thank you for having me in your home tonight. Appreciate you taking some time to talk with me. I promise not to waste your time.
Simple, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't need to be hard. It doesn't need to be complicated. We make it more complicated than it needs to be. Good job. Okay, super easy. That could be the same every time you do your presentation if you want. They only heard it once, right? So we're gonna do that. Okay, so any questions on that one? Okay, number 2, asking questions. 20 powerful, factual, and emotional questions that we want to ask. So let's write down some of these questions. What are some questions you can ask?
Where are you moving to?
Okay, where are you moving to? Is that factual or emotional? Factual. Okay, depends. Maybe they don't know. But now, where are you moving to? They're gonna say, I'm moving to Bountiful.
Tell me
Okay,
why
that's a
you're
specific.
moving.
Bountiful, great.
Okay, now let's turn that into an emotional question.
Share a little bit more about that.
Share a little bit more about that. Tell me a little bit more about what takes you to Bountiful. What's important about being in Bountiful? That becomes a factual question that moves into a emotional question. Okay, what's another question we could ask? Here's one that I like to say in my needs and wants. I'll say, you absolutely have to sell this home. Or I might ask it this way. So what ultimately are you trying to accomplish by selling this home? Okay, once they answer that question, then I might want to hear more about it. Tell me more about that. Why is that important to you? You know? I like this one. I like, what will selling this home do for you and your family? We touched on where are you moving to next? When would you like to be there? Those are 2 factual questions. You know, they might not be, when we say factual questions, it might not be like, I have an exact, I want to be there in 33 days. I did have a client though, that they signed the listing agreement if I could if not guarantee, but if I could get their home sold in 27 days. We sold it in 26.
Nice.
What would I have said? Am I ever going to guarantee that?
No,
No, but what could I say to, what could I say to that person who said, can you get this home sold in 27 days?
Yes, I can.
I'm gonna give it my best shot.
Okay, yes, you can. Okay, that's guaranteeing it. What could you say that doesn't guarantee it?
I'm gonna give it my very best shot.
Okay, I'm gonna give it my very best shot. What else? What else would you guys say? What would you guys say?
If you you know, if you do exactly, follow, if we have a game plan,
Mhm.
we follow this game plan, we can sell it.
Perfect. That's what I said. If you follow my plan and you price it right, we'll get it sold in 27 days. That's not me saying I'm going to get it done in 27 days, because if they don't follow my plan, the chances of them selling it is going to go down drastically. And I said, you price it right, we'll get it sold. And we priced it right and we closed in 26 days. Make sense? Okay. Here's one I really like to ask. What would you do if your home did not sell or you didn't get the right price? Just want them to come out and tell me. Are they gonna rent it? Are they, no, I need to sell this home? You know, am I open to adjusting the price if I can do it? I just want to know what they say. So I'll ask them that question. Okay, some questions in regards to expectation and separating myself. Ones I like to say is, what's most important to you regarding the agent and the company you choose? I like to say, what do you expect your agent and company to do to sell your home? Another one I like is there any special marketing strategies that are important to you? I just want to figure out what they've heard. And I always follow up with this one. It says, is there any kind of marketing that you don't want me to do? This brings up the open house conversation. Whether I want to do it or I don't want to do it, I want to know if they want me to do it. And if they want me to do it, we might need to have a conversation, because I might not want to do it, but I might want to do it. But I want to figure it out. Okay, sometimes we're really quick to judging what they're thinking. Somebody says, do you do open houses? Luce, do you do open houses?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, what if I'm a person who hates open houses and I don't want an agent who's going to do an open house, and she just said yes? What just happened?
Door closed.
Door
I
closed,
guess you
drop my
could-
report.
I guess you could ask that question with a question. It's like, do you do open houses? Would you like to do an open house on this house?
Perfect.
They say, oh, no. Well, then we won't do that.
And that's
People
what
have
we're.
to say yes or no.
Right, and that's what we're doing. We're asking questions. We're trying to discover. So just because I say I don't like, or I didn't say I liked it or I didn't, I just asked you a question. I said, do you do open houses? And you said yes. Well, if I'm a person who does not want you to do open houses and you just said yes, I might just be like,
It's not required, I do them, but it doesn't mean you don't, I will do it.
yeah, but
So I
you,
just
but
went
here's the
wrong.
here's the problem.
Uh-huh.
If I don't tell you I don't like them, I just accept the fact that, oh, she does open houses.
Well, so her answer will be better, asking you.
Yeah, ask the questions. Okay, so as an agent, we want to learn to do that. Okay, now we're gonna do, this is the last one on, let's see. Okay, any more, so you can go through a lot of these in your script book. There's 20 plus, 30 plus questions you can ask in there. What I would suggest is get a lot of really good factual questions and then turn those into emotional questions. And that way you can lead them. Okay, earn the right. 5 things about yourself, 5 things about your company. Okay, what would be earn your right? What does that mean?
Like the value, like, I guess, show them the value 50-20, how's that?
Mhm.
Yeah, showing them that you have the resources to sell their home. Or you have marketing strategies.
Yeah.
Kind of show, okay.
Okay, and I want some for the company and I want some for the individual. Why do I not just want only the individual?
Because the company is ultimately, who you're signing with.
I think that's important. Yeah. Okay, if I just told you how great I am for 5 minutes and then I left at that, how would you feel about me? I'm the number one agent out there.
You got a big ego.
I got a big ego, right? I don't want to come across as ego. So George says a lot. He said, I'm not here to impress you, but I am to impress upon you the things that can help you get your business done. Okay, so I'm not here to say, well, guess what? I did this, 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 and this. But if I need to separate myself from the competition, I might need to use some of these stats that says, hey, these are things that we've done. Last year, Century 21 Union Park, #1 office in all of Century 21 offices, 7,000 offices. We are #1 in all of those offices. And I'm part of that group. Separation. Okay, so we want to create some about you, some about them. You could be your personal record. Could also be a previous job you had where, for me, I said earn the right. I've worked with people on lots of different projects and I've helped them take from the start to the finish. And that's exactly what we need to do in this transaction. Start and a finish. Nobody wants to just start. I'd like to make sure we finish. Justin, okay? So that's me separating myself. Okay? Any questions on that one? Everyone have something written down there? Okay, next is sound bites. What's a sound bite?
1 minute elevators.
Okay, 1 minute elevator speech. What does it relate to?
Could be different things, could be what you're going to do, what you've done, and. If you've been listening, how you're gonna meet their needs.
Okay. So we determine that based on which questions I'm asking. Okay, a soundbite gives me an opportunity to brag a little bit, but really drive a point home. Okay, it's something that, that reminds me of a time when this happened. Have you guys heard me say that in this presentation where I will say, hey, it reminds me when I was on the mountain and I was helping rescue a person?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if it had zero to do with the topic, that's not a helpful thing, but we bring it back to, I needed her to take baby steps. I needed her to be grateful. I needed her to do something different with her mindset. So now I'm giving you something that you can connect to the point that I'm making with a soundbite. Okay, does that make sense? Yes. Okay. Any questions on marketing exposure? This is a section where you could talk about marketing exposure. Anything that Century 21 offers you a listing presentation packet. You can get it at the front desk. You can ask marketing to send you the electronic copy. I think you have to pay for the one at the front desk because it's already in a folder and it's already ready to go. So you can just go up and grab it and go to your presentation. But you could also create one of your own and print it off. And we're not charged for that. We just charge for if you want to go up to the front desk, but you can have marketing create your own version of that. Okay, so when you're marketing exposure, you can talk about how that's happening. Okay, on the back side, you're going to see some closes. What's the difference between an assumptive close, a trial close, and a formal close? What's an assumptive close?
When we get this on the market. I mean, you just assume that you're already have it.
Okay, so you kind of went into the trial close on that one.
Yeah.
Because you added you in there. Okay, an assumption is more broad. Okay, I want you to think of it as like, when you get your home on the market, when you get the home on the market, this is going to be a really good selling point. Okay, I'm assuming that you're going to list your home. I'm assuming that. Now, a trial close would be, when we get your home on the market, this will be a good marketing strategy for us. Okay, now I'm assuming, or I'm doing a little bit of a trial close of saying, you're going to work with me, right? Like, I'm not saying you work with me. I'm just saying you're going to work with me, right? And that's where I'm trying to get the confirmation that they are. And then a formal close is sign a contract. Okay, so I might do some assumptive closes as I walk through the house. I'll be like, yeah, this would be a great feature when we get your home, or when you get the home on the market, and then I might go into my trial close, when we get the home on the market, is there anything that you want to make sure that I get included in that? Like, what do you want me to include? And then I'll do a formal close. Is that making sense?
That backfire on you at all?
Can. If you don't have rapport and connection and you go straight to a trial close and they're not ready for it, it will backfire on you, which is why for me, it's always best to just do an assumptive close, just kind of just ease into it and see how they feel. But really, I just like to go through my presentation and then just do a formal close at the end.
So,
Would assumption mean if we get this home on the market, and a trial would be, no, assumptive is when we put this on the market.
When you put the home on the
And
market,
a trial is.
when I get the home on the market. That makes sense? Okay, so you just want to be careful with your connection there. Remember, we don't, but if I'm not in connection report, then I'm not gonna do it.
I use, when we put this home on the market, what are 3 expectations that you want me to do? I mean, that's kind of that same, is that the formal or is that a trial? That's
Nope.
It's. Cause I'm really
Well, so,
asking right now, do you want to do it?
yeah, this
You know,
it's
tell me
more
the
of a-
3 things you want me to do.
yeah. But that's more of like the trial close because we're trying to test out whether or not they're going to do it. We're just testing the waters. Because they might say something like, they could be like, oh, wow, we might not work with you. Versus a formal close is like, let's sign the contract. Let's begin now. That would be the formal. Okay, objection handlers, there's some really great objection handlers in your script book under presentations. We talked a lot about expectations, so I gave you some of my expectations. I expect them to be have their home available. I expect them to show their home. I expect them to have their home clean. I expect open communication, and I want to have their expectations. Pricing and strategies. Okay, that's a whole nother class about how to price something and strategize. We won't go into that one. And then the last question is, why should I hire you? Okay, this is the separation right here between the things I buy and the things that I've learned. This is my separation. So I'm going to give you my separation. I'm just going to read to you what I say when I need to separate myself from the competition. Well, where I'm giving them this. Okay, this is how I started. So I always start with, now there's many different things that we can do to get your home sold, but may I share with you why you should hire me? Okay, there's 4 things that I do to bring value to you and help you have confidence in this process. Okay, first, I advise and consult. I've been in the business for 16 years. It's not a part-time job, it's a full-time job for me. It's a commitment. This market can be very frustrating, Aubrey, but I want to make sure that we know what's going on. Okay, the second thing is market exposure property. Okay, what I want to make sure is that no matter what, your home can be seen anywhere, anytime, at any place. Okay, Century 21 has the right marketing to get your home exposed to that. How would you feel if your home just went on the market and nobody saw it? Terrible, right? And I want to make sure that we're getting market exposure property. Third thing is negotiate. Okay, my role is to protect your equity. This is where money's made and lost in this process. Okay, I want to make sure that we're getting you the best price and protect you through the process. Okay, and the last thing, but an extremely critical one, is oversee the transaction. Okay, did you know that 50% of the deals that go under contract fall apart? Okay, so I'm assuming, Aubrey, that you want to get your home closed. You don't want to just list it, right?
Definitely.
Okay, so this is the step that makes that happen. What I do is, once it goes under contract, I'll make 150 plus calls coordinating the actual process. If it's not done the right time, the right sequence,
The right people.
with the right people, I don't say that, but that sounded good. With the right time and sequence, deals fall apart. And you don't want to get to the closing table and have it fall apart, right?
That's right.
Okay, so now let me ask you this. You can buy things to get your home sold, but what you can't buy is leadership, salesmanship, and communication. What you're actually getting when you hire me is someone who's going to lead you through a process and help you protect your equity and your family during this time. Do you see value in having someone like myself representing you through this process?
Yes.
Perfect. And then I'm going to go to my formal close. Do you see you expect anything else from Century 21? Do you expect this? Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So are you holding that script like during the presentation?
Yeah, so the way that I like to do it, now I haven't done that section for a while, so I wanted to read it just exactly how I had it, but I take this presentation with me, and the way that I set it up in the presentation is, look, we're going to talk about a lot of really important things tonight. I want to make sure I don't miss any of them, so I've got them all written down. So I'm going to just refer to this. If you have any questions, let me know. So I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to tell them, like, look, I don't want to miss anything important. This is important. It's important to you. It's important to me. Right? So I like that. That's why it's beat up and can fold really nice because this goes with me on the presentation. And I've made changes through it all, you know, I probably should just update it, but you know, when you have something that's just like, you know, where you wrote it, and you're going through a presentation, you're like, I know it's on the third page, just a second.
Here, I'll do that.
Well, and the challenge is people ask me all the time, can I have this? The reality is unless you create a presentation that is for you, that works for who you are and your personality, it's not going to work. I could give you this presentation. In fact, you can look at this first line right here, okay? That line right there is all crossed out. By going and giving my presentation and realizing that this was very wordy and really long and it made me uncomfortable, I had to shorten it. Okay, and I knew that because naturally I would shorten my presentation right there because once I felt it uncomfortable, I never gave it again. So I went through and I kept practicing it over and over. And then I said, I don't like to say that. So I'm going to cross that out. And then I wrote something else like this question. And I just keep working through it. So what I want you to do is I want you to take this paper here and really just define what you're doing in these questions. All you need to do, Aubrey, you already had one here. So that's done. Write it down. Now we get this game plan. Game plan is just explaining it. Remember, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. Then I will actually tell you. And then at the very end, I'm going to tell you what I told you. We're do that 3 times, right? So this should be really easy. You should have this down, right? This isn't a problem. Now it's the questions. Here's your questions. There's 20 questions. What should those relate to? Each one of these. Figure out how you're going to understand the market and your close. So we talked to the very first in the class. I said, I'm going to give you some things you can practice. Okay. We all role play. Role play is a great way to practice, but it's not the only way to practice. In fact, the sad part is that's the only way most of us practice. We do our 30 minutes in the morning with Rick and Ruby, and we might get 1 or 2 role plays in if we're lucky. If there's a small group, you might not even get one in if there's a big group or if you show up late, right? Problem is you hear it, but you don't practice it. So what can I practice in here? I can practice this with somebody. I can practice explaining my game plan. I can figure out what my action plan is. I can ask myself the question, why should you hire me? And just go around and ask an agent, Luz, why should I hire you?
Because I'm
Boom.
the best for your job.
Okay, that's what Melissa said. Right? So I want you to really get that down. So for me, there's 4 things that I separate myself: advise and consult, market and expose, negotiate, oversee the transactions. Those 4 things. Those are the things I like to bring out when somebody says, Jason, why should I hire you? Or even my favorite is, Jason, why should I pay you $25,000 to sell my home? This is why you should pay me $25,000 to sell your home. That's something you can practice. Global market. Practice getting online, figure out what the global market is, figure out where it is. That's practice. It's getting better at your skill. And then the close, if you don't practice your skills in the close, you'll never use it. There's a great book, Never Split the Difference. Okay, in that book, he says a line. I'll leave you with this line. He says, when the moments are tough or the tension is high, we don't rise to our expectation. We shrink to the highest level of our preparation. Okay. So we always think, oh, when the things are tough, I'm going to rise to that occasion. We don't. We actually only go to the level of our highest preparation. So if I don't practice in an environment that's safe for me, and I get in a real environment, I will never do it at the level that I could. So you practice these things at a level that is beyond what you would do in a presentation. You get really good at it. One of my favorite techniques is I take I've got a ball in my office, and I'll role play with somebody and I'll throw it back and forth while I role play, because when you're role playing and you're throwing the ball, you're doing 2 cognitive things at the same time. You'll either drop the ball and remember your script, or you'll catch the ball and you'll forget your script. Okay. But as soon as you get your script so internalized in your head and you don't have to think about what to say, you can throw the ball back and forth and talk, because you're not thinking about what you have to say, because you know what you have to say. As soon as you get to that point, then you can listen. Okay, any questions? Okay, that's all I got. If you're still online, put your name back in there and I can see that you stayed.
That's still good.
Okay, any questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
If you didn't sign up, there's a sheet somewhere. Can we get that sheet? Oh, it's over here. Sign up. If you don't sign up, then Russ will put you back on the list to hear this conversation again.
I got hungry and ate it, sorry.
Yeah.
Have a good day, thank you.
Yep, see ya.
Thanks, Pete.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Let's see,
Justin.
How are you?